Hey there, you. Welcome back to yet another XCOM video, and yes, I will be milking this franchise forever.
Does anybody remember the Bureau, Xcom Declassified?
No, don't you dare cover that. We don't talk about that game.
Yes, we do. Through the magic of editing, you even introduced it yourself. The Bureau is a long-forgotten XCOM game, or more so, a game filed under non-canon, which, to be fair, it does go a little against the grain. But I like to think of the Bureau as a game based in an alternate reality or alternate timeline to the base XCOM series. Critics gave it mixed reviews, averaging out around 6.8 out of 10, and most XCOM fans shunned the title due to its lack of turn-based strategy, direction, and high expectations. Needless to say, it has a really bad reputation. So why? Why are we reviewing this in 2023? Let me break it down for you. This game is a horror game. Hear me out, but first, some context. This game was definitely too ambitious for its own good. It didn't really know what it was or what it wanted to be. It feels like a mix of Max Payne, Mass Effect, X-Files, and Twin Peaks, but all set in a XCOM-like universe with a twist of horror all wrapped up like a mystery burrito. From 2006 to 2013, the Bureau went through development hell. Yes, that's a whole 7 years, and no, I'm not talking about the FBI. This started with an identity crisis of sorts, as Irrational Games, split between the Boston and Australian offices, threw a bunch of ideas at a wall to see what sticks, and then gave up. Later, the Australian office decided to split up and form 2K Australia. 2K Marin then got involved and wanted to make a multiplayer game akin to Left 4 Dead. This, however, was a terrible idea, and they ended up merging 2K Marin with the Australian studio and got busy creating the single-player experience, completely canning the multiplayer mode altogether. Don't worry, I am just as confused as you are. This eventually led them down the first-person shooter rabbit hole, which didn't really go anywhere, but the one thing that did stick to the wall was the setting of the game, 1962. The game had 3 titles as far as I know. Wikipedia! XCOM, The Bureau, and then The Bureau, XCOM Declassified. They didn't really stray far from the path when it came to titles. The game, however, well, that's a different story. So, the release had to be pushed back due to all of the above and the fact that they kept failing to meet milestones and deadlines, blah blah blah. The info is on the internet and my time is limited. The controls aren't the best, but also not the worst. I have the Xbox 360 version, but the footage you're watching was taken on the Series X, and I gotta say, for its time, there were games that felt much worse. The combat is engaging when you know what you're doing, and punishing when you don't. There are many mechanics in the game that you will either love or hate, or merely say, meh. The Bureau is a third-person cover shooter that actually plays like Mass Effect. I mean, you get 2 squad mates that come with you at all times, they have their own abilities that you can trigger through a radial menu, and all squad members can level up, including William, and be outfitted with better guns and gear. Like, it's practically Mass Effect. However, the instructions you give your squad mates are more advanced and tactical than Mass Effect. Something closer to Brothers in Arms or Full Spectrum Warrior, but definitely worse than both. Flanking is essential. Prioritizing particular enemies will be the difference between life and death, and your squad mates actually have permadeath. So don't just send your boys out willy-nilly, actually think before you act. Yes, I did say boys. You can't have female squad mates in the Bureau, and this is intentional due to the sexism in the era which the game is set in. I give that a pass as it fits in perfectly with the 1960s theme. Anyways, you juggle your own abilities with your squad and find a playstyle that you like. There are 4 classes for your squad: Commando, Engineer, Support, and Recon. You can have 2 with you when you go out on missions, but travel alone when you're between jobs. You can also send out squad mates on missions that they can go and complete on their own. So it's good to level them up and mix up your squad from time to time. Commandos are good for offensive skills and know how to shoot a rifle. Engineers specialize in placing turrets and mines on the battlefield. Supports are your medics, and Recon are your snipers. They all have their merits, and you should familiarize yourself with each class's skill tree, as leveling up has a decision-based path, just like XCOM Enemy Unknown, but more limited. Be aware of your surroundings. Finding weapons on the battlefield, or tucked in corners, adds it to the list of equipment that you can select, and that is also the equipment that your squad can select. The game doesn't give you much ammo at a time. Sure, there are places to replenish your ammo, but switching weapons on the go can save you in a pinch. Personally, I like to blast all of my shotgun ammo into the biggest enemy and then switch to a fully automatic. But that's me. The customization in the game isn't anything to write home about, unlike other XCOM games, but at least it's something. Yay, I can change colors. The meat of the game isn't actually about combat though, and this, in my opinion, is where the game really shines. In the Bureau, you play as a man called William Carter. I should have introduced him before, but I did mention William. He's some washed up ex-hotshot cool guy from a forgotten era, haunted by his past because, of course he is. William has a very important briefcase he needs to deliver, but things go awry after he receives an unwelcome visitor. This kicks off the campaign and introduces you to combat as aliens have landed and now terrorizing the area. You soon find out that the president is dead from director Myron Falk, who becomes the head honcho at Xcom, and William and Nico da Silva, a fellow senior agent, has to narrowly escape a nuclear explosion before they reach the main base. Bloody hell, what an opening. As a matter of fact, the main story is action-packed to the brim now that I think about it. There is a lot of fully voiced dialogue and story to uncover. The voice acting is genuinely decent, and there are some really engaging cutscenes and events that take place. I mean, as a Mass Effect nerd, I can appreciate the amount of effort they put into the dialogue. It is very similar, user interface and all, and I will drink that up like the thirsty bitch I am. There are a ton of characters you can interact with, all with their own quirks and personalities. Falk is a paranoid, ends justify the means kind of guy with a cold exterior, stern and stubborn. Da Silva is a laid-back buddy cop with a penchant for explosives. Angela Weaver is a takes-no-shit badass that made her way to second in command next to Falk. And she's a woman. And in the 60s, that's impressive. The entire crew have lines upon lines of dialogue, and those you can't directly interact with talk amongst themselves about random things and random events. The base changes as you progress through the game, and there are plenty of side activities to keep you busy. Personally, I spend most of my time just walking around and exploring. There are notes you can collect, lore to uncover, side quests to complete. There is a gun range, a science lab, operations center, and offices, a kitchen, a bathroom. Need I go on? There is a lot to explore, and I don't want to spoil it for anyone who wants to give this game a proper go. Just know that a lot of effort went into the immersion of the game, and it makes exploring all the more satisfying. Okay, I really need to wrap this up before it gets too long. This game is a horror game, in my opinion. So about 2 hours into the game, provided you aren't skipping all the dialogue and cutscenes, you discover a town that at first appears to be abandoned. Before long, you come across your first sleepwalker, an infected human with black ooze coming from their eyes, nose, mouth, and ears. It starts as a sickness. People think it's a flu, and then they stop making sense. They get stuck in time doing whatever they were doing at the time the infection took over, on repeat, over and over again. They repeat sentences, they repeat actions, they are disconnected to reality, and the aliens are collecting them. This infection is where the game really makes me feel uneasy. This is why I call the Bureau a horror game. I walked through a barbershop and there were two men. One was standing above the other, shaving the face of a man sitting in a chair. They were both infected, and the barber was cutting into the flesh of the man over and over and over, and it was clear that this had been happening for some time. He had literally been shaving off the side of the man's face one layer at a time. That scene speaks volumes to me, imagining what else could be happening in the world. It is truly terrifying to think that a disease or infection could spread and make people lose themselves in such mindless repetition. I don't know if it was an intentional link, but it reminds me heavily of people in the later stages of dementia, where their reality is stuck in a loop. The Bureau, Xcom Declassified, is an underrated gem that deserves a second chance. People need to experience the game in its entirety. Some of it is repetitive, yes. Some of it is cliché. I believe that was the point. It isn't perfect by any means, but for what the game has to offer and the sheer amount of features included in the game, it is definitely worth your time. They did their best to splice XCOM into a third-person shooter, and at that they succeeded. It was not what people expected, but looking back, from tactical cover combat to strategic squad placement, scenes that make you laugh to scenes that churn your guts, characters that you love to characters you hate, the Bureau has it all. I have barely scratched the surface of the game today, but that's my point. I recorded over 6 hours of gameplay for this review, and I've barely made progress in the game. Not because I needed that much footage, but because it takes that long to show off some of the great moments and I had trouble putting the controller down. From the first moment I played this game to playing it today, I still had fun and I still got chills. I forgot how great the exploration was. Although linear, it was packed with detail and love. Detail and love. Everything that I have discussed you can find within the first 2 hours of gameplay. The Bureau is full of content and it didn't get the welcome it deserved at release. Don't expect Mass Effect levels of quality. Don't expect a turn-based XCOM game. Play the game with fresh eyes. I honestly believe it still holds up today. Now it's time to finish off Nimble Monster. The ritual must be complete. Must be complete. The ritual must be complete. Complete.
When I regenerate, I'll come for you.
Goodbye, old friend.
No, please don't!
Must be complete. The ritual must be complete. Must be complete. The ritual must be complete. Must be complete. The ritual must be complete.